guys, how are you doing? Hope you're doing well. Happy uh, 2025. um, so, kind of want to jump on and do this quick video. Kind of actually came into me last night to kind of contemplate and dive into. It was probably around 2 in the morning, and kind of talk about this topic. A lot of people may have questions related to it, so I wanted to share it. And you know, although we do sign up for the experiences that we have, we actually sign based on our soul level awareness, what we're working on as a soul being. Um, we take up a body which is related to our experience and our existence. We pick and choose parents, friends, things like that. What we want to do is like as an intention, we're setting experience, right? So this is what I intend before coming in. Then we take the body that matches that, right? So it's a scenario like, because everything has to fit, right? Everything fits perfectly. It's all synchronized. It's all perfect. It's all divine, right? Orchestrated. In the scenarios that when we get here in the body, because a lot of us are taught out of our understanding and our perception and our perspective of what it is that we're coming into work on, heal, deal with, change, transform, because everything is already suited here in the body, right? You take up the framework that matches you. So if your lineage has dealt with abuse before, it's recorded in your DNA structures, right? It's a memory. It's in the body frame. It's not who you are as a soul being, your existence, your experience, your trueness, right? It's in the body, which is a frame of work which stays here on the physical realm. It doesn't exist anywhere else. That's why we pick up the body and we exit the body and we go back home, right? So this is all an experience on this level of physicality, right? And we take up the body, which is related to our experience of what we want to have, and we take up the person, the framework of that existence, which again all exists here. Your thoughts, your mind, your beliefs, your traumas, your whatever has happened from the stream of consciousness past, and all that is combined into this little framework, right? And based on your past is what you're taking up and you're learning on it, because there's all these indicators, all these mechanisms, all these experiences that has a memory and remembers what you're wanting and needing to work on. And then when we forget, we have the spiritual amnesia. We come into these places where we forget who we truly are on that existence of awareness and become the body when we're attached to the body. When we're not attached to the body, we have the other aspect where we can be the observer of the role and the experience and learn from that way. We're not in the experience as the body framework, the identity, the frame, the ego constructs. But when we are in that, then we are the player in the play, right? So you have the player in the play, the observer, and then the one divine connected to source, right? Which is a relaying back of information within this whole thing. Now, if you think of the body as like a construct, being, everything exists here in that way, right? And so from that being, you can see it, and I like to relate it back to a computer system, right? It's the programs, the hard drive, the computer itself, the framework of the, you have your monitor, your keyboard. These are all things that we're playing with it, regardless if we know that we're doing it on an unintentional or intentional way, from that as a being, a soul being, a physical human being, in the term, like your whole construct here, your physical being of the body is like the computer monitor, the keyboard, and the keyboard helps you to navigate the computer, the system, the hardware, the drive, the DNA, the intelligence of it, just as we are, right? As a being, soul being, a spiritual being. Relating back the information, we're diving deep into certain areas, like if we're going down a rabbit hole researching something, right? It's almost very simulated, right? And I believe this is why they have been able to develop the computer. It's a great segue into understanding yourself and how it actually works. And it's like a mirror reflection to us as is, and so is AI, right? Which is another intelligence that's being created, right? And it's what we do with it that makes a difference, right? So if you're going to do good with it, great. If you're not, then that's going to be the outcome. But anyway, that's on the AI topic. Going back to the topic of what was shown to me last night, we have all the framework here, right? And so when we come into this framework as a soul being, we take it up, everything is here, everything's written. It's written, but it's not in stone because it can be changed. We can change and navigate it like the programs in a computer system. We can change the programs to manifest something else or do something else or create something else. So once we pre-load the software, what we want. So we're picking our parents because they already have that in their DNA, their structure. Because if you think about the family tree, the structure comes from so many people and what they've added to it, like a soup, right? And so it's all combined in one structure, which is the DNA, the memory, the form, right? So when we come in, we have all these things that we can take and pick from and choose from, right? Although unconsciously we don't know that we're doing it. It's this mechanism that keeps going on within us that's changing that from each time period and framework that we're going from one to the other. And it can be challenging if we don't understand and know this, our genetic makeup or how it actually all works from that perspective or that awareness, right? Because then we're like, oh, well, this happened to me, and this is this, and this, and this, and this, right? So all we have chosen the parents, which was passed down through you through birth, all that energy and vibration of the past down into this one little package of who you are as a divine being, your soul relating to this time, space, reality, serving its purpose to do its thing, what you came in to choose to do, to have the experiences, and then to make the change, right? And so whether you came in as a soul being to make the change or to continue to live out the patterns, to learn from it and to observe it and to experience it, whatever it is that your soul purpose is in that actions and reason for taking up this being, which is for me, like me, it would be my Laura self, right? Everything here in the Laura self is made up of what has been through my generations, ancestors, past lives. Everything is here set in stone, right? And so from that perspective, we're doing the sifting and sorting through all of this memory and DNA and creating. Because when you want to create something, it's already there in your DNA. And then it's you taking up the body, which is framework, the mainframe, that is creating the situations. And although you may not know it or be aware of it, that you were part of in the creation of it because you took it up, there's other things that come into play, which is of that other information, that DNA of structures of what's been already built prior to you. And so if they haven't healed it, worked on it, and they've created something and they suffered something, it is relatable to your experience wherever it is that you are on. And you may experience the same thing, carrying out the same cycles and patterns. Now, whether it's from your upbringing, your teachings, your belief systems, what's been passed down to you in this lifetime, but we are affected by past lifetimes, generational lifetimes, ever since the beginning of that existence that started, right? And so it's an accumulation over time, which has created the body. And the body includes many different diverse levels. And a lot of people look at the body as just physical, but it also includes the energy. So it goes energy to physical, the manifestation of it in creation. And so your thoughts are included in that, your emotions are included in that, your actions, your beliefs, your speaking, that is all included in it as part of the manifesting and the creation of it, right? From that dynamic of awareness that you may or may not be aware of that you're doing, the unconscious and the conscious. So from that level of awareness, everything is included in the body. So it's the dynamics of all different levels of awareness. And if you look at the astral body, the energy body, the other bodies that exist in your aura, the space, it's all included because it's going from non-physical to physical. It's just in different layers, if you will. And from that perspective, we're able to manifest and move through consciousness that way as it comes through you and goes out of you, right? It's a relaying of information that we're taking up in every day. And we can see that from the things that we experience in everyday life. We can feel, we can touch, we can smell, we can sense, we can hear. And this is all related into the information that's being stored in this body on the framework. And each place has a place that it gets stored, right? Like a computer, right? So you can store it on the D drive or the E drive or the drive that you take out, the removable drives. Adding an extra hard drive, it's all computed and calculated like that, as a simulation of a theory, right? In theory, as a relating example that they're sharing with you, so you can have an idea of what that kind of looks like and have a better understanding of how you actually work as a DNA structure. Because we're memory, we're intelligence, we're a DNA structure that's bounded by the physical realm and form that we've created and built it to be from the beginning of time. And we've all added to it collectively on a patterns. And that's why when we have a patterns collectively that we're going through it, like now in this time frame, we're all on a collective level healing and clearing out everything that has ever been in the darkness and the shadow, which brings me to the shadow. So what is in the shadow? Shadow is everything that we don't want to see, hear, feel, acknowledge, face, fears, doubts. It could be what we're ashamed of, what we've been told is bad or good. It's everything that is in the shadows that are not in the light. And that's what we're going on a collective level. Everything is coming up now into the light to be shown and seen of what we're not dealing with from the shadow aspect, right? And it's clearing, cleaning out all that energy and vibration that we no longer need as we're going into the next half or part of the generation and evolution of flow to raising consciousness, right? And so that's what they're saying, like the other half. So saying that we're like halfway through, possibly. So, and then things like what we are traumatized about, right? Which will bring me to the next part of it, which kind of came in last night, right? So this is kind of building on each other. So things that we have been traumatized, things that we have chosen as a soul to come in and pick up this framework for the experience of, which we've forgotten about through the spiritual amnesia. And we went to the collective and we said, okay, I'm a human, I'm no longer the soul existence. And so now I believe that I am human as I've been taught by my parents, society, this framework that's been created here on this level of the physicality, right? So our experiences that are in our DNA that we've taken up in this body already remains, right? It remains from generations until it's healed and cleared out. And every time a soul comes in and takes it up, you get the opportunity and choice to work on it and deal with it and change it and transform it if you want to. Otherwise, you would just continue to live it if it gets triggered within you. But that may be just what you came in to experience. So there's nothing ever wrong. It's always ever right, if that makes sense from what they tell me. And so from that perspective, although we have traumatic situations, so say you've been abused, right? A lot of people are seeing the whole white party situation and things like that, where you've, whatever the case may be, physically, mentally, emotionally abused, right? And so, no, it's not right. It's not okay, right? And it's okay to be not okay with that in the experience, right? Because we have to heal it. We have to look at the shadow. We have to bring it up into the light, right? To transform it. But how do you do that? You go into the shadow, you have the experience, you have that understanding and knowledge, and then you bring it out into the light, right? And that's the only way that you can know it. You can't know the shadow unless you go into the shadow, right? So no, it is not okay, but it is what we came in to participate in. And so in a sense, we did choose it because we chose this body. It's a framework of what's already here and been placed in this to have the experience that you get something out of it. You get to understand what that is, right? We want to take the shadow and we want to transform it, right? But it's always up to you. You know what I mean? It is your path. Everybody has their own path and what to do. And I've been working on and this is how I know this, because I've been working with my guides, spirit, and channeling this information, putting it in writing, because I do automatic writing and books like that. And so all that has been informational. And then my near-death experience, being on the other side, the life reviews, you name it. But through my own experience, I've observed this happening, right? And now it all makes sense. They're helping me put the picture, the pieces together, right? And now with this big experience that we're going in with the shift of humanity, raising consciousness, and everybody's waking up, we do want to dive into the shadow, right? And we want to look at these things. We want to face these things. And although no, it is not okay, right? It's not about blaming the other person or shaming the other person, because we're just putting that in the shadow, right? We're just recreating it in a different way of shadowing it over the shadow, right, if you will. So what they're saying is basically you want to do your own self-work, you want to do your own healing. And what came to me last night is like, when we don't expose the shadow, we're protecting them, right? And it's not that we're doing it, we would want to do it in order to expose them, to harm or punish them, because there's no punishment on the side, right? There's no judgment, right? It's to heal the shadow, right? That's the reason for the exposure, because when you are hiding something, or you're not talking about it, you're not speaking it, you're keeping it hidden, right? It's in the shadow and it needs to come up and out. And so we want to talk about it, right? We want to share our feelings. We want to speak it out and bring it out into the lights, right? And have that exposure on it so it can be seen what's going on. Otherwise, it continues to live in the shadow, and it continues to form and live out as an entity, and it affects your life on many different levels. And although we don't want to, hopefully, intentionally make them wrong, right? Because it's not really about that. Although a lot of people do make it about that. They did this and this and this, and don't want to do any self-reflection on, okay, what is my part in this? But we signed up to be here, right, at the same time. And although we've signed up to be here at the same time, we do want to expose the shadow. We came in to expose the shadow, to bring the shadow up to lights, right? And to have that. And a lot of us are light workers and shadow workers. And so depending on what and where you are is what you're working on, right? And so we want to remember this and not forget this, right? And so when I say we want to expose everything, we just want to bring it out, right? We want to look at it, we want to shine the light on it, we want to speak it, we want to talk about it. If you need to heal it, or you want to have that conversation with that person, this is how you made me feel, this is what you did, this is what I did, but you want to do it equally, right? It's not always about one person. They came to be and help bring that experience as the one being the doer, right? While we were the receiver, or you can call it the victim, right, of the situation. But we both have a part and role. There's not just one person on the stage playing out a play or a movie, right? So you want to kind of look at it and how that all works, right? What is your play in the role, which is the purpose of a play, right? Shakespeare has talked a lot about that in his way of sharing what is going on in our lives, but a lot of people don't get it. Which Spirit talked to me in those frameworks of Shakespeare, because I took a Shakespeare class. So that helped me to bring bits and pieces of understanding to that in my journey, to know that this is just a play, and we all have a part and role in it. Some are playing the villains, some are playing the good witch, just like Disney portrays. All this, the messages and everything is all around you. You just have to see it, right? You have to see the messages and the understanding, and look at these different things and how it relates to you. Everything is there for you. You are so I'm trying to find the right word for it. You have all this information around you. You just have to be observant of it, right? And look at it. And that's been my journey. And with that being said, last night at like 2 o'clock, it's like, when you are not speaking your truth, you're keeping it in the shadow, where it continues to live out on that time frame, which I'll get to in a minute. But you're also protecting them, right? And so it continues, right? Which is the relaying of information, right? And so it continues in their life, because what happens is, if you don't bring it to their intention, because they are in amnesia, then how can they change if they don't know it? Because we're only living in the space that we know, right? Now, if a person This is what they just dropped in to add. But if you're a person who's grown up in an environment that knows nothing but stealing, you're gonna steal to survive. If you've been in a family environment where everything is love, then you're going to be that, unless there's something within you that has been sparked where you're that one off, where something else is going to happen, or whatever your soul came in to orchestrate. In this family dynamic, you know, you are a product of your environment for the most part, right? And so from that point of view, you know, the one off would be like the black sheep of the family, right? And so I'm kind of that way in my family. Everything else, they just kind of follow along suit of what's been going on, you know, in life. And so that's been a evolution of abuse on all levels, right? Things like that. But my soul had come in to make the change, to be the change maker, right, in the family dynamic. And so when we take up the body, we have that ability to do that. You know, if we are aware enough in the context, the construct, we have the ability to do that and to make that mainframe, the computer system, change the programmings in it, right? And so you are the DNA of that structure that is making the change as far as the soul level consciousness in the dense reality of the physical form DNA perspective, right? And so you have all these different programs going on, and you get to pick and choose what you want to do and how you want to do it in that framework. But we don't really understand and know that this is actually going on, the unconsciousness. But once we are going back to where they're directing me, is although we want to not protect them in what they're doing, you know, a lot of times we will not realize that we are protecting them by not speaking and keeping it within us, hidden, either whether we're ashamed of it or we think it's normal or this is just the way that it is, or, you know, we're fearful of speaking truth. It's the only way to bring it out into the light and share it with others on the experience of it. That's part of what heals it, right? Just like everything's going on the collective, you know, a lot of things from like Disney, the white party, you name it, everything, the governments, the food, the vaccines, everything's coming out, right? The aliens now, and now the fog, whatever that situation is. But everything's now coming out, you know, and that's just the way that it is as we evolve through consciousness, raising consciousness. You know, it all has to come out of the shadows, the darkness, what's been hidden for eons. And either we're always either doing it on the individual level or the consciousness, right? The collective consciousness level. And so when we're seeing this, we're having a lot of feelings of emotions, thoughts, beliefs, things arise within us. And a lot of people, and I did a video on that last weekend, but that's what's coming up. And a lot of us are suffering because it doesn't feel good, right? But instead of holding on to it, we want to let it pass through and check out that video for more on that. And know that it isn't you, it's everything that's just in this computer system that we all hold, right? We all have our own system to work with, and whatever's on your plate is what you're working on, right? And you need to just self-love, self-care, work on it, and whatever's rising, just love it, you know, just exist, just allow it. Don't be attached to it like an identity. This is who I am. It's not who you are. It's what we came in to participate in the transformation of it, which is just allowing it to flow through and experience it, acknowledge it, and do whatever you need to do. And so whenever there's something that comes up that is for you to work on, anything that's like abuse or whatever it is, you know, do that healing, you know, turn in, work on that, talk to somebody, get a counselor, get a spiritual counselor though. Don't go to somebody who's going to medicate you and not help you deal with the situation, because medication just masks it and helps you deal with the symptoms. It doesn't get to the root cause. You need somebody who's really going to be spiritually inclined. It can look into the energy and vibration of it and help you to actually heal it and move through it and understand what's going on. So they have more of a broad perspective, if you will. They're more spiritually inclined. So in the process of not dealing with their stuff, not only are we keeping it hidden, so it's harder for this energy and vibration to move into higher consciousness, but it's allowing it to come up so we can see it in the surface, right? And in doing that, you know, we are helping them to become aware of what they're doing, because again, in their situation, they may be unconsciousness in what they're doing because they think that's what it is, because that's their been environment, that's been what they've grown up with, this is how life is, this is what we do, right? So you speaking your truth helps them to awaken, if that makes sense. And the words that dropped in last night was, when you're not speaking your truth, you're protecting them. And I went through that too. Like I always would say, it's okay, I forgive you, whatever, because, but on a conscious level, that was in my DNA, right? And it was a bypass of looking at the situation. So we don't want to bypass, right, either. But at the same time, you got to find the right balance, right? Basically, is what they're saying. You don't want to bypass in our intention to expose it, whether we're telling somebody in a session, a spiritual counselor, or if we are, whatever the case may be, whatever we have to do to expose it, it's not doing it from a place of punishment or to get even, because none of that exists on the other side. It's part of the play that we come in to have the experience. But at the same token, we do want to not protect them and keep them in the darkness, because they're in the darkness just as well. And they are, because they are doing it, right? Whoever is doing something like that is in the unconscious darkness, the shadows aspect. They're living that part frame out to be in a part of the play. So they've forgotten their spiritual self, their true self, just as we have done to be able to take up the part in the play that we're playing. It goes both ways, and we got to kind of see it from that perspective. And a lot of people may find that hard to contemplate and deal with, because it can be a very traumatic thing that's happened. And when I finally came out, throughout my whole lifetime, and it started back in, I don't know, in my 20s, where I started writing letters. It was just like I had this need to write letters to people, to make that come to light, and to shed and to share and to heal and clear that energy. And I would do that periodically, and I went through everybody. It was like I went through people who were not in my family, I went through everybody who was in my family, and it was like it was something in me, my soul was making me going through every situation, reviewing it. And that's why I do the coaching that I do, to help people with the life review. And that's why I had 2 life reviews, one on the near-death experience when I was on the other side, and then when I came back, right? And so that's why I help people with that process. So you can always book a session if you wanted to start diving in on yours. And it's not about, like I said, it's not about trying to punish somebody or get even, or because you're just drinking your own poison in that place, right? So you're keeping it in the shadow, actually, right? And then you have to deal and work on that. So the evidence needs to come up. So whatever that case may be, and you want to bring that to the forefront, work on it, heal it, and not keep it hidden, because you're actually protecting them, which was something that obviously was in my DNA belief system, without really realizing it. And I didn't realize that me not speaking it or doing things, I was protecting them, but I was also not just protecting them in a way that it goes 2 ways, right? So I was not just protecting them from them not getting in trouble for doing it, but I was protecting them from being exposed, right? And so in that aspect, you're helping them, right, by exposing the situation, right? So you're helping them and you're helping yourself. And at the soul level, higher consciousness, we don't want other people to suffer, right? But at the same token, we don't want to keep it hidden from the experience, right? And so the shadow effect is the overlay, which I have a book on, which is part of the process of the life review, and that is on Amazon if you wanted to get that. It just gives you invocations and passages to meditate on and contemplate and work with, and to remind you as you're speaking them to be present in your life, right? And keep that aspect, understanding going, that that this life is just for that aspect temporary, right? It's not forever lifetime, right? So we're not always here for a very long time, but in the aspect of, keeping it in the shadows, um, a lot of times we believe that we don't, well, I guess for me, I didn't really have the awareness that it actually was abuse, right? But when it was brought to my attention, I was like, that is abuse. But I didn't see it that way because I lived in that mainframe, right? And a lot of people do. They don't realize it's abuse, right? And so we protect them by not sharing it and getting it out in the open. And again, it's not about coming from a place of hating, hurting, trying to get even, because you're only drinking that own poison for yourself, because that you're going to have to work on and deal with too. And although we both all agreed whatever is in that situation to come and to have it, it's because we agreed to take up the life, though we may not have agreed in our understanding from the human perspective that we agreed to that certain situation, right? So there's a lot that goes into it, and to dive deep into it, on this video, I don't want to do that. It's already getting long, but that is the perspective that they kind of wanted to share. And so understanding that our lives are part of the evolution of it, we all come in to take a part up and play and work on that in the DNA and change and transform it from that perspective of where you are as a soul level. And changing that dynamic of the DNA, we can create something else and something other than what it currently is, which is the evolution of the soul on a higher perspective and awareness, right? The perspective of the human form, every time a soul comes in and takes it up and creates something new, it becomes a new existence, right? Just like I am now, this form as the Laura, the human and dynamic, is totally different than the one that I was 30 years ago, because I've done 10 tons of work on this being, right? So this being is a total different person than it was before, right? Those who would know me a long time ago would not know who I am now in this existence. But the dynamics keep changing over and over again and relating through. And every time a soul takes up, they work on a different part of the aspect of this being, right? And then your children are the collective of you and all other existences, right? And so what they're going to work on is going to be worked on by them, right? And they make the change that they came in to make the change, or have experiences that they won't need to experience, and so on. And it's just a collective form that keeps going on and on and on, that takes up, puts it down, takes it up, puts it down. So you're never existing in it like forever. It's just a temporary state of being in your awareness as your soul level being. And so with that, that's pretty much just what I wanted to share in this video before getting off too much more into a whole other area of topic. But yeah, last night was just, when you don't speak your truth, to do this video on that, when you don't speak your truth, you don't do the shadow work, then, you're protecting them in that way. And a lot of times I didn't really think about it in that way, and so basically that's how you free yourself, right? Is to expose the situations in your life that you've had and talk about it and rewrite that paradigm in the energy system of the computer, the DNA, the structure, your framework, right? Your construct of who you are as this entity, this vibration, this reality. And when we change that, we have a different perspective, because then we get to change it, whatever we're working on that part of the DNA structure that we've been given or we've chosen to take up to come into on this timeline, right? And so each timeline that we have something that and I'm going to go back to that because that was part of it that I didn't go back to. So like, say at 5 years old, right, something happened and you've buried it, right? Whether you were told not to tell, or it was fear-based, or whatever the situation was, that is a set point timeline we're working on. Also, from that set point is continuing to live, and it affects your choices and things throughout your lifetime, right? And so you're actually limited, right? Because your 5-year-old might be like sending signals, don't do that, don't do that, don't do this, and you can only do this, and no, I don't want to do that. And so you are living in these constructs from certain timelines, which is evolution throughout timelines. So you have your Laura self, right, where you currently are in the present moment, but you also have your past self based on different time frames, which is currently living in the unconscious, the memory DNA that's been created creating this entity. And that's where child work comes in, inner child's shadow work. That's where all these different healing modalities come in, and working with all those to help heal and transform that, right? And then to bring that up current, putting a new program in there, right? We replace it with something else, because there's no absence of anything. There's only the shadow and the not, and the shadow is filled with everything that isn't in the light, right? And so when you take something out of the shadow, we replace it with light. So we change and transform the energy and vibration, because once you can't take it's not like a piece of pie, right, where you take a slice and the rest is there and there's missing, right? There's still something there, you just can't see it, right? And that's what's living off of you and your DNA structures that can be draining you and forcing you to do things that you don't want to do, or things that you do want to do but you're not doing because of the situation of the past, right? And the experience of why you did it, and whether it's fear-based or whatever the situation may be, or you're replaying out certain scenarios or situations that you had in your past, because it's written in your DNA. And so we do want to look at that, because a lot of times when we're going through what we're currently going through now, you can feel like there's an entity attachment to you. And really, it's just this energy or vibration that's continuingly to evolve from that perspective, from that situation that's been created, that's in the shadows. And it's not coming to get you, it's coming to get your attention, your awareness to it. It's not really an attachment outside of you, because there's nothing outside of you, your own creation, right? And so whatever you have in this energy vibration that you're holding, that you're not dealing with, or you're working on, which is that energy and vibration entity that you've created over time as it's evolved from that very set point that has taken its place, and that you've buried it and given it an identity. Until we name that and give it, or understand it and look at it and heal and transform it, we will continue to have that experience. And a lot of people will think that's an attachment outside of you, but it can be something that's been through DNA ever since the beginning of time, any past lives. It could be anything, right? And so we are reliving that out, that perspective. On that reality. But when it comes to light, right, and when it comes to light, or it wants to come to light to be healed and transformed, we start feeling it on an energetic level, and it may feel like that is an attachment or something like that, but it's just something that needs to be dealt with, right? So trying to run away from it isn't going to help. And you can basically, because I counseled people for 2 years in these situations, and you can see that, saging isn't going to make it go away. Trying to do these spells isn't going to make it go away. You have to face it. You have to deal with it, right? It's within yourself, right? It's an aspect of self that you've created that's separate of you, that you've identified with, or you're shunning and putting in the shadow, the aspect of it, creating itself as an entity until it's ready to move on, right? Because you can't move on in life until certain things are dealt with. And so the aspect of keeping it hidden is not only protecting them, or whatever the situation is that has helped to create the situation that we've buried in our DNA for whatever reason of the experience. We're helping them to continue it, right? When we need to expose it. And again, not doing it for the reasons of, trying to be harmful to another, but they're just in their unconsciousness in doing it. And though it may seem like, oh God, we all have levels of unconsciousness, right? And it's not that we always intend to protect them by keeping it in the shadow. And that is what's exposed, right? In that saying from last night, that was exposed to me last night, is like, sometimes we don't really think about it from certain aspects, that when we don't talk about it, we're actually protecting them, and it keeps them doing it over and over again. So we do need to speak our truth, even if it's something small, like, what you just said to me isn't inappropriate. It's not okay, right? It's not okay, right? And although they're not at fault for doing it, it's just the unconscious awareness of who they are and their experience. It's just, maybe that's the way they've been talked to, so they talk to you that way, right? It's a repeating process, cut cycle, unconsciousness that takes place, that we don't even realize that we're going to the spiritual amnesia, right? And we're not always conscious of everything that we're doing at all times in our awareness. And unfortunately, people suffer from it, in that unconsciousness space. But it's when we bring it to the light that we can share that we are not only bringing it to light, but we're healing it by bringing it out. And this is what we've been going through in Sintra pretty much more intensely in the last few years, and we're halfway through. So let's, just kind of wanted to share that there for you. And hopefully that helps make sense. And, just kind of become aware of, what you've been through in your experience. I know, like I said, I came to a point where like, oh, that was abuse. I didn't see it because I was living in it. And it wasn't until I was like, oh, it's freeing. You can free yourself from it by just that experience alone, becoming aware of like, oh, because you don't really know it until you know it. And it's not me as myself, as my true self, my source self, right? But as the aspect that the program is awakening within you, right? If that makes sense. So I'm going to kind of end there because otherwise it's going to just get all convoluted and confusing. But if you have any questions or anything like that, want to book a session, do a life review, we can kind of start diving into that and work on that, book some sessions, get the book off of Amazon. I'll put those links below as well. And thanks for tuning in. Happy journeys.